Hello everyone and welcome to a second edition of the L4G TV Education Show. My name is Chris Ogle and I'm here today once more with the inspiring David Mills. Come and say hello, David.
Hello, hi Chris. Pleasure to be here again.
Yeah, good to have you on. We haven't really spoken a huge amount since our last show, but I know that we've got some really interesting things to talk about and some of the projects that you've been working on. And I'm hoping that these shows are going to inspire people who have similar thinking and are thinking along the same lines to sort of step up and come on here and join us, because we don't want this to be a David and Chris show.
Absolutely not. That's right.
Okay, so last time, do you want to give our viewers just a very short recap of kind of where we finished up last time, so that we can kind of set the scene for what we're going to be talking about this week?
Sure. The crux, I would say, of our first show was this idea that we really need, in order to facilitate the creation of a new society, a new way of living and being, a completely different paradigm of education. And we talked quite a bit about challenging this core assumption. It's almost the biggest unexamined axiom of the school system, which is this idea that learning is the result of being taught. And we talked a bit about this idea of the experts know best. Well, who are these experts? And out of this assumption, out of these assumptions, comes the need, the perceived need for a curriculum. So you have schools revolving around delivery of a curriculum. And what we feel the new approach requires is a shift from this outside-in perspective, where we're delivering information to kids, to an inside-out approach, where we start with the children and their innate passion and creativity, which starts from the belief that every child is a unique individual. And I view every child as a unique individual with an unlimited creative potential. So I see this creativity as something that is innate within every child. And this new approach to education is about tapping into that and enabling children to connect with their creativity and their innovation. So we're shifting away from viewing children as passive recipients and dependent consumers, and instead viewing them as creative learners and innovators, as natural born creators and innovators.
This is a massive shift. I hear what you say.
It is.
It's a massive shift away from the concept of people saying that we need to teach kids to have the skills that are needed by the jobs market, by industry, by whatever. And we're talking about here saying, well, you and I know, and so do a whole load of other people, that the days of jobs and this kind of prescribed way of living is changing and coming to an end. And it's not great news for the baby boomers. It's not great news for people to say, all that stuff you've been working for the last 70, 80, 150, 200 years is kind of getting to the end of its life, really. And what we're going to need for the next phase of the human species is actually something completely different, and it's a big ask to get people to sort of make that leap. But in reality, we've got some pretty major issues going on in the world right now. We've got some pretty egotistical, power mad psychopaths out there who want to rule this world, and they want to dominate over it. And you know, they're heading up some of the big countries in the world, And to get from that to where we need to go, which is where we're creating a planet that actually can house 9 billion people and feed them all and enable people to have a good life, happy life, is a far cry from what we've got right now. And the people that are in these positions are unable to create that future. That's the bottom line, isn't it?
Yes.
So what we've got to do is not crush the next generation into believing what we've created is right, but to encourage them to solve the human problems that we've got in the world today.
Yes. I love a quote by Albert Einstein who said, problems cannot be solved with the same level of consciousness that created them. And this is the issue that I see with a lot of the educational reform programs, is we're trying to solve problems with the same level of thinking that created them. And as you said, it is a major shift that needs to take place. But this is the thing. It's an internal shift. It takes place within the hearts and minds of individuals. It is not something that can be programmed from the outside. It's not something that I can sit here and teach anyone to do. It's an internal shift, and it's a choice that you make. And I see it as a shift from the rational mind towards the intuitive mind. So it's more about connecting with the right hemisphere of the brain, or really it's more about a balance between the two. There was another quote that's attributed to Einstein. In fact, I think it's a paraphrase of something he said, but it was along the lines of, the intuitive mind is a sacred gift. The rational mind is its faithful servant. We've created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. And this is where I feel children have such a hugely important role to play, is because having spent the last 16 years working closely with children, both in groups and on a one-to-one basis, I see that they are already embodying this new consciousness that is needed. And therefore, they're the ones who are going to kind of lead the way. It will be them holding the hands of us adults and showing us the way, which is a huge, as you say, you can't deny it. It's such a fundamental shift from what we've currently got. But that is what I feel needs to be done, and that is the premise upon which everything that I do, all the work that I do with children, starts from this belief that the children have the answers. And so my job is to stop trying to teach, to program, to indoctrinate, but instead to enable, to empower, and to allow these children to tap into their innate creativity, passion, so that they can start to solve the problems that we have created with our outdated consciousness, if you will.
So where do you start with something like this, David? I mean, it's you're talking about here about children being able to tap into. I mean, it's a bit like saying to the children, do you know, you've got the massive gift, you've got this huge gift, this amazing thing that you've got, and they're probably going to turn around to you and say, David, I hear you. Tell me how to use it. Tell me how to use this amazing power I've got, because I really don't know. And if you know I've got it, tell me how to wield it.
Yeah. And how do I know that children have got it? I'll tell you how I know, because I found it inside myself. This goes back to what I was saying a moment ago about this is something, it's an inner shift in consciousness. So I've been on a journey, and a huge part of my personal journey was immersing myself in nature. I talked a little bit about, briefly, I think, in the last show, about my attempt to kind of provide a conceptual framework for this new approach to education. I call it the EduSpire paradigm. EduSpire standing for education infused with spirit. And the idea being here that rather than children being educated, they can be eduspired. In other words, inspired to educate themselves and us. And one of the key presuppositions is that nature has infinitely more to teach us than any creation of the human mind. And in fact, it's in nature. Nature is the most natural environment in which to connect with our natural selves. And I use that term natural selves because I genuinely do believe we are natural born creators and innovators, and children are natural born creators and innovators. So how do we help them to tap into their inner beings, to start tuning into their inner voice? We immerse them in nature. That for me has to be the first foundational step that we take. And it's for that reason that I've created, with the help of two close friends, a nature-based, it's, how would I describe it in the simplest terms? It's a nature awareness school, I suppose, it would be the simplest description of what we've done. And we've created it at a local farm in Bedfordshire, 14 acres, community garden, orchard, open space. It's an idyllic outdoor space where we work with children, small groups of children, no more than 12 to 15 at this stage. It's quite early days. And we cultivate the connection with their inner selves by playing all sorts of sensory awareness games. So to give you a few examples, we do an activity called drum stalking, where we blindfold them, spread them around the field, and then one of the mentors bangs a drum, and then they make their way back to that drum using their senses. But of course, they're deprived of their sight. That's kind of the dominant sense for most people. So that's a huge challenge for some children. We play all sorts of games in the woods, games like capture the flag. Just looking at my list of some of the games we do. Meet a tree, that's another one where we blindfold the kids, and they get directed by one of their fellow students to a tree while they're using the sense of touch, and then we take them back to the start location, remove the blindfold, and we say, right, go and find your tree. And they have to identify their tree based on what they'd felt while they were blindfolded. So it's all about getting kids into their bodies, sensory awareness, and then the latest stage of what we're doing is all about cultivating stillness and silence. So we do an activity called Sit Spot, where we get them to sit in a particular location. They get to choose it, and you just sit there in stillness and silence, so that you effectively become a part of nature, and you just observe what goes on in this little spot. And it is incredible, the things that happen and the stories that the children come back with. It's best to do it in like 20-minute intervals. At the moment, we're building it up very slowly. So we've just started with like 5-10 minute intervals. But these are kids that have never really had any experience of that, and they're taking to it like ducks to water, and coming back and saying, it was really fun. I was amazed at suddenly how nature opened up to me, and I could hear birds, and I could hear distant traffic, and I could hear the sound of the breeze through the leaves. All these things which we take for granted, we just do not notice, because we tend to be so in our minds. This is again what I'm talking about, this shift from the rational mind to the intuitive mind. We're helping these kids to empty their minds and tune into their senses, so that they can receive clear guidance from their intuition. And I believe the intuition speaks to us primarily through our imagination and through our feelings, through physical sensations. And immersing children in this kind of natural environment really facilitates that process. So that's what we're all about doing. And as I said, I see that as the first step to preparing children to step into their role as creators and innovators.
It sounds like I know the spot. Are you talking about Clop Hill?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there, and that place is really quite a special place. But I can imagine if people haven't actually had the opportunity, which is almost like mindfulness, really, to
it is very much so,
and take in and be grateful for even having the senses to be able to pick up these things. It's just a wondrous experience. And I can imagine that, you know, when you actually take the time to actually say, do you know what? I mean, I told you the other day I was driving up to somewhere, doesn't matter where, but I prepared a bowl of fruit.
Yeah.
And at this time of the year, I normally suffer from an allergy, which robs me of my sense of smell, which of course screws up my sense of taste. And I've stopped drinking earlier this year, and actually the problem has all but gone away. And I was just thinking as I was driving, the sun was out, it was a glorious morning. I was driving, I was just thinking, do you know what? I'm so lucky I can just get in this car and drive. I was eating these, I had apricots, plums, nectarines, orange, apple. I had all these fruits, and I was just taking each one just a piece at a time. And I was thinking, how heavenly is this taste of this fruit? And it took me about half an hour to eat this bowl of fruit. It was I had some strawberries as well. It was a real joyous half an hour of self-indulgence in this fruit. But I just thought afterwards, I've never really I've just stuffed the fruit in my mouth, you know what I mean, and eaten it. And here I was, really, really appreciating this bowl of fruit for the first time.
Yeah.
And
I know exactly what you're saying, yeah.
And I just think that if you can teach, or no, not teach, but show children how they can really be grateful for everything as they go, it's just so different to the upbringing that we had.
Yeah. The other thing that I love about nature is that nature becomes a teacher for the children itself. You know, we give them opportunities to go off, sort of free time to do what they want, and then nature becomes the teacher. So it's not about the adult there as an authority figure. Obviously, when you start off, we've got 3 mentors at the moment, 3 of us working together. Obviously, we do provide a framework of activities, but within that, we're giving the children as much opportunity to own particular interests and identify their own passions, what they're actually wanting to explore within nature. So for example, we've got one girl who's developed an interest in butterflies. So that tends to be her focus on some of the activities. She will look for butterflies. I want to say about nature. The connection between nature and creativity. If you're watching this, you never really thought about this. And again, I'm going to use my own example here. My best work, I do a lot of writing, a lot of publishing of posts on my blog and on Facebook. My best stuff comes just after I've been out for a walk in nature. That's what I do to connect with my inner voice, if you like, or my inner wisdom, my inner creativity, my source of creativity. I go and spend time in nature because it's something about being in nature allows me to connect with my own nature, and that's where we find our well of ideas and inspiration and creativity. So that's the other key thing that I wanted to emphasize about spending time in nature and why I feel it's just so crucial.
So tell us then, after we've got a situation where we've got into nature, for example, what do you do next to kind of, if you like, help them? Have you got any examples where you get a group of children who've kind of gone through some of this process, and then they've basically kind of emerged the other side, and they've kind of done something which has surprised you?
Yes, and over the past 3 years, I've been involved in various little projects with groups of kids here and there, in order to kind of test out all of my ideas. So I'm not just sitting here as somebody who's come up with a bunch of theories. I've been putting everything that I'm saying into practice. So yeah, there is one good example that comes to mind. It was a couple of years ago. I worked with a group of, there was 5 home educated children aged between 11 and 16 in Newport Pagnell, and I connected with this group of kids through their mums who'd seen me speak at a home education conference. And she said, oh well, this group, they've got this dream, they've got this vision of creating a prom for their home education community, because they don't go to school, so they miss out on that. And they would really love this idea of holding a prom. So I turned to the mum and said, well, why don't you let them create it then? And immediately she said, we wouldn't know how to do that. And I said, well, it's easy. You trust them. Set them free and say, go on, do it. So at that point, I offered to facilitate the project. I said, look, I've come up with this idea called Kids Create, where I would move around and work with groups of kids on projects. And I've got this grand vision of this spreading throughout the UK. I don't know whether it will ever happen, where groups of children are coming together to work on projects like this. Yeah, all over the country.
It will.
But so I saw this as an ideal first step. And I said, okay, let me work with this group of kids. Basically, I will support them in creating their own prom. And so what happened was they took responsibility for every single aspect of the prom's planning and organization. So I just prepared a little list here of things, make sure I don't miss anything out here. So they were, for example, they decided on the theme, they decided on the budget, they decided on the ticket price, they sent emails to parents to promote this, they designed posters, they phoned and visited potential venues. I can't tell you how amazing it was, for example, to see a 12-year-old on the phone haggling on price. I just wish that I had had that kind of opportunity as a young kid or teenager, because it's something that even as an adult, if I'm honest, I still have a bit of an issue picking up the phone. I hate talking on the phone, but here we were giving these children at the age of 11, 12 the opportunity to phone up venues and say, look, we want to create a prom. Can we use your venue? How much do you charge? We can't really afford that with our budget. Are you willing to come down on price? And it was wonderful how well received they were as well by the adults on the other end of the line. What else were they doing? They agreed on the food arrangements. They organized the sound and lighting equipment. They went shopping for plates and cutlery to match their theme, comparing prices at different supermarkets. They sourced fairy lights. They planned and rehearsed a 20-minute performance of acoustic songs. They prepared thank you speeches. They decorated the hall on the day, which included a red carpet for the entrance and a neon lighting for the mocktail bar. Obviously, we didn't allow alcohol. For me, it was just, but the event itself on the day was a huge success, but it wasn't the actual event that mattered. It was the process that they went through to get to that event, and the learning that those kids gained through, it was over the course of 4 months, I would argue was far more powerful than anything they could have learnt sat behind a desk in a school classroom. It was real life skills that they'll be able to take into their adult lives. Now, I realize that what I'm sharing there might seem quite a simple example, but the reason I'm choosing a simple example is because people often say to me, David, I don't have any training or experience or qualifications in education, so I don't feel I'm able to support children in the way you're talking. You know what? If you haven't been to university, if you haven't got education qualifications, in the terms of what we're talking about here, that is actually an advantage, because you haven't been indoctrinated, you haven't been, I call it institutionalized, you haven't been got that institutionalized mindset, which is actually gets in the way. The institutionalized mindset, the schooled mindset, continually wants to interfere with the children and tell them what to do. Oh no, I'm the adult, I know best. If you haven't had that training experience, that is a great benefit, because it means you'll be able to meet the children as equals and being at that position to say with all authenticity, I trust you, you can figure this out for yourselves. All I'm going to do as an adult here is just hold a safe space of unconditional acceptance and trust within which you are empowered to take over and create what you want to create. So yes, it's a simple example. And of course, it's just a first step. But I see that evolving over time until we reach the point where groups of children are coming together and working on real community problems and even international issues. For example, I've met a group of kids who feel really passionate about the plight of dolphins and whales. So they want to start creating an awareness campaign. Awesome. Let's do it. Let's empower them to do it. Let's provide a space where they are enabled to pursue that interest, that passion, and provide a platform on which they can stand and their voices can be heard. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I mean, from what I'm seeing from a Link4Growth perspective, is almost it's almost bringing the adults to kind of get this to the table, and what we're building in terms of a platform is definitely available and open to providing that space for kids to connect across spatial distances who are interested in similar things, because actually those things can spark, synapses and other thought processes, and before you know it, you've got a runaway train of great ideas, all coming from these young fertile minds, which are thinking outside the box. They're not controlled by, oh, you can't do that because, or you can't do that because that's not there. And it's like, well, hang on, we've got a white sheet of paper here. We do what we like, can't we?
Yeah. And that is truly, truly amazing to hear, because that's the main obstacle that has been presented to me when I've talked about my Kids Create vision. People have said, David, the infrastructure just isn't there. If I can talk a bit more about the infrastructure, there is an already existing alternative infrastructure for learning and education, at least in my mind, in my visions. I see us utilizing, we've talked about Clop Hill, which is a farm. That's one example. But coffee shops, museums, art galleries, community centers. There are so many spaces that we could be using to facilitate this process of creation, to provide opportunities for kids to create and innovate. And what I love about Link4Growth, what you've created there, is you are actually connecting individuals, small businesses who, if they're truly on board with this vision, are going to want to support these children. I can see us approaching local coffee shops, for example, and saying, look, we're looking for a space where children can come and start talking and discussing their ideas. Are you willing to support us with that? And I firmly believe, because we're taking a collaborative approach and we're actually taking the time to build relationships with people in the local community, that there will be an opening for this, and we can create that infrastructure that people in the past have said to me just isn't there and it doesn't exist. I think we can create it quite easily.
I mean, you're absolutely right, David. I mean, like all the coffee shop owners that are joining the coffee shop union, for example, if you said to them, well, can we have a kids create sort of once a week or once every 2 weeks here in the coffee shop, and the purpose of it is to just get all these kids buzzing and for them to share ideas. Like, they would just go, they'd love it. They would absolutely love it.
Awesome. Let's do it.
So yeah, I mean, I will have that. I've got to go off to a coffee shop a bit later on with an innovation, which is mocktails. Now, kids can drink mocktails as well. Yes. So the bottom line is these coffee shops are becoming, pubs don't hack it because you've got to be 18. It's got to be a pub where, and these coffee shops, we're sitting on 10,000 independent coffee shops that not only can become the community hubs of tomorrow or today in some cases, but not only that, they can be the educational hotspots for creating the innovation in kids that we sorely need.
Yes, and what I love about them as well is that they are public spaces, because the other thing that gets thrown at me is, with all the concerns about adults taking advantage of children, etc., etc. The thing about a coffee shop is it's a public space, so I feel a lot of those issues are alleviated. And also, this is the other thing I want to say about what's happening with the children that I'm working with, with the whole nature thing, is children who are tuned in to their natural self automatically know, they just know, this is the intuition thing, when someone is not of pure intention, if I can put it that way. They know who to trust and who not to trust. And that's something that is not always true of children being brought up in the conventional school paradigm, because it doesn't facilitate that relationship with your inner self, your inner being. They don't have that strong connection to their intuition. I've had this, ever since I was a very little boy. I've had this ability. I can sit in front of somebody, but I have to say it's felt like a curse at times. I know when somebody is lying to me. I know when I'm being manipulated, because I have such a strong connection to my intuition. And that has got stronger and stronger and stronger as a result of the time that I've spent in nature. And I'm seeing it with these children. So that's another huge benefit of immersing kids in nature. These kinds of concerns that people have, we can't trust children to be on their own because they might be taken advantage of. Actually, kids who are empowered and who are connected with their true authentic selves are far safer than children in a conventional school environment where it's all about the adults being authority figures.
Well, what you've just...
Not sure if I'm expressing myself clearly, but I'm doing my best.
What you've just described there is basically saying one society is controlled and managed by rules, and another society is managed and controlled by individuals having the intuition to recognize situations or people. And that's what dogs have got. I have absolutely no problem. Horses, I can. Dogs know I love them. They know when I go to touch them, I'm not going to hurt them. They have the ability to know who doesn't like dogs. They tend to have a problem with those people. And what we're doing, what you're doing here, is basically saying, if we allow kids to learn and we don't brush over it, it's a bit like, I draw the analogy to eating. If you don't recognize when you're full up and you just keep stuffing your face, in time, your body, you become desensitized to that thing that says, you're full up, lad, stop eating. You become desensitized to it, and you keep eating, and you keep eating, and you end up being obese. Now, if you do that with your intuition, and we encourage people to steamroll it, stop that, don't do that, follow this, follow that, follow these rules, why are you being naughty, face the front, stop talking, do what we're doing every single time there is crushing this intuition, the development of the individual, and replacing it with you'll do as you're told, follow the conditioning, follow the rules, we know better, you just do what we say, and stop being odd and unique.
Yes.
And you're right, we are
depriving them of the opportunity to figure things out for themselves, which they are perfectly capable of doing.
Yeah.
And for those, one thing that I have to say here, the only reason I am so secure in what I'm saying is because I've come to trust myself unconditionally. I know that everything I'm saying about children is true for me. That's the only reason I'm able to say it. And this trust, the word trust, is so huge because it is essentially a trust-based paradigm I'm talking about, because it's far freer. The extent to which you trust a child will always be determined by the extent to which you trust yourself.
Life's a mirror.
Absolutely. Which is why we've kind of gone around in full circle here, back to what I was saying at the start. This shift in consciousness takes place within the individual. It's an individual's choice. It's a journey that you have to go on. And until you've made that shift, and the two words that I use are fear and trust, or control and freedom. I see the prevailing paradigm for living and being very much about control and fear. But I've been on this, I've made a transition within myself out of my rational mind into my intuitive mind, which I see as a reflection of a shift from fear into trust. And because I've got that unconditional trust towards myself, because I know that's true for me, I see any child in front of me and I know intuitively, I don't think, I don't believe, I know that child can be trusted. And what that means is when children are in my presence, they live up to that expectation, if that makes sense. It's not about, I'm not putting myself here on a pedestal and saying I'm better or more special than anybody else. What I'm saying is, because I've found that level of trust within myself, I see it reflected in the children.
Yeah, I think I call it the personal victory.
Okay.
And I've written the first book about Link4Growth, which is about, really, it's about what we're doing. I was trying to write what I thought was the second book, which is how we're going to rebuild community. And what I didn't realise until I was halfway through it was, hang on, we need a book in between, which is you can't go about rebuilding community until you've gone through the personal journey.
Absolutely.
And the personal journey is where it's all at. You can't really do this.
Yes.
Because if you can't look in a mirror and trust that and know what you're putting out there is the truth, then you've not finished. You've not finished the job.
No.
So, good stuff. All right, look, we'll call it a wrap here. It's been fascinating. Talking to you today. Let's see if we can. Get do a little bit of work between now and 2 weeks from now, and see if we can get some people on with some other stuff that will help to sort of take this forward. But I'm definitely, between now and then, going to start sharing this video, because I think there are some people out there running coffee shops that will be delighted to take you up on what you talked about there. And let's see if we can get a project or two off the ground.
Oh, that would be seriously exciting for me. Well, yeah, that'd be awesome. Thanks, Chris.
All right,
great stuff.
Okay, well, thank you for watching this show. If you've now come to the end, so if you've got this far, well done. We'll be back in 2 weeks from now, which I can't remember what the date is, but it's what we're on today. So next week will be the 10th. So we'll see you back on the 10th, where we'll have another, I think will be another enthralling show. So please join us then. And thank you, David, for taking the time to come on here and share all this amazing stuff you're doing. It's much appreciated, and long may it continue.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much. And for those that watch the show, thank you very much for your interest. Come back again 2 weeks' time.
Okay, thanks very much. And cheerio from us. We'll see you on the 10th of August. Thank you.
Bye.